Hello all, I'm Wadabra. Welcome back to Adastra. In the last episode, we arrived at Adastra. Hooray! Amicus's brother was an asshole. Marco sleeps on the couch and once again dreams of a big empty void, feeling like the agency in his life has been taken away. In this dream, the mysterious voice returns and asks what Marco thinks of death. Definitely nothing suspicious going on there. Later, Marco learns some basic pet duties, until reaching a compromise to only help Amicus brush his fur. Marco is still mad about being kidnapped, but he's slowly catching up to the rest of us and realizing that his kidnapper, Wolf Boy, is kinda hot. Marco compliments Amicus. Amicus compliments Marco. Amicus tells Marco he's going to have to pretend to be stupid in order to not draw extra unwanted attention to himself. Definitely nothing suspicious going on with the wolf's children either. That's the recap. Content warnings and a link to my Patreon can be found in the description below. Let's get started. So, who's Kato?
The wolf you saw with my brother. He was my father's advisor and currently the acting emperor. I mentioned earlier that he'll be choosing between me and my brother. That's why I'm doing my best to keep him in a good mood. Or at least not a bad mood. I don't think he has a good one.
I keep in mind to stay on Kato's good side as well. Meanwhile, sunlight pours in through the open windows, and I can hear birds calling from outside again. Birds.
What was that?
I can hear birds. I'm just surprised they sound the same as they do on Earth.
Ah, yes. You wouldn't know this. All life has the same origin and develops in a roughly similar way. It's only natural that life here is similar to your moon. Planet, I mean.
Oh.
Well, all life on this side of the universe, at least. There may be another, but we'll have to leave that conversation for later. For now...
I follow Amicus around a corner and find myself standing in a large, spacious room. The first thing I notice are the large screens on each wall of the room, displaying colorful images of stars, galaxies, and spaceships. In the middle of the room are what look like beds surrounding a table. In those beds are the two wolves I saw earlier. Kato is sitting and leaning over towards Cassius, who is draped luxuriously over one of the beds. Kato is talking to Cassius, while the other wolf has on his typical sour expression. Sitting on the floor in front of Cassius's bed is a creature that I've never seen before. It's definitely not a wolf, more feline-like. Cassius has his paw on its head, idly scratching it while he listens to whatever Kato is saying. He sees us and abruptly stops, sitting up. Kato stops talking and looks over at us.
You're late.
And good morning to you, Cass. And to you, Kato. Alexios?
Amicus turns to Kato and the small cat creature, bowing to both of them.
Good morning.
Morning, Amicus.
The cat, Alexios, nods at Amicus with a smile. At the same time, I see Cassius tug on the gold collar around his neck. It isn't very much, but Alexios immediately drops the smile from his face, looking down.
How many times do I have to tell you not to acknowledge him, Amicus?
Amicus seems to ignore Cassius, walking to the empty bed while pulling me along with him. He whispers in my ear.
Sit in front like Alex is doing.
I look over at the cat and see his ears perk up in our direction, though he continues to avoid looking at us. He's in a kneeling position, so I do the same, starting to feel a little uneasy about this whole setup. Amicus, meanwhile, stretches out across the bed, an elbow in the cushion as he props himself up.
Come, send in breakfast.
Yes, Kato.
A few seconds later, literal flying saucers levitate into the room from beyond another archway. I get a moment to see some sort of black device on the underside of the plates before they gently come to a rest on the table. I blink, but don't say anything, deciding to just take everything in without question. I decide instead to focus on the food. I can at least identify a few of the portions, one of them being what looks like bread. Then there's a plate of an odd, white, crumbly substance, and next to that is a bowl of what I'm pretty sure are olives. There's a glass bottle filled with some type of red liquid, probably wine. Finally, in the middle of the table, next to some towel-like napkins, is roasted poultry, golden-colored and steaming. It actually smells really, really good, and considering that I haven't eaten any real food in over a day, I feel my mouth water. Still, I have enough common sense to know that I probably can't just dig in, so I keep an eye on the cat, waiting to see what he does next. He grabs 4 small plates from the tall stack and sets them down in front of himself. Then he starts to grab some slices of bread, which he sets down on one of the plates. I look back at Amicus, and he nods. So I do the same, grabbing 4 plates and setting them out in front of myself on the table, starting to grab the separate portions of food to set them on their own plate. Meanwhile, Kato just leans over to grab his own, while Cassius clears his throat.
So, Amicus, what is this?
I look up and immediately find Cassius's eyes boring into mine. I quickly look back down and grab up the wooden-handled knife that Alexios just set down, using it to spread the white stuff onto the slices of bread. I wrinkle my nose at how stinky it is, and realize it's probably some type of cheese.
This is Marco. He's my pet.
No, Amicus. What is it? It's not one of our children. Does it belong to a sibling?
I'm half listening to the conversation while I see Alexios reach out with his bare paws and just pull a chunk of meat off the poultry. I hesitate, kind of wishing I had a chance to wash my hands, but do it anyway, wincing at how hot it is. The temptation is strong to just stuff it in my mouth, but I manage to set it down on the plate. Finally, I grab a bunch of olives and put them on their own plate. At this point, I can see that Alexios is lining his plates up in front of Cassius on the bed. Carefully, I do the same for Amicus, though I lose an olive in the process. I watch it roll across the ground, but decide to ignore it, and Amicus just pats my head with a muttered, "Thank you."
No. He's from a failed uplift.
I watch as Alexios starts filling the goblet with the red liquid, but look up when I realize there's complete silence. Cassius and Kato are both staring at Amicus. I look back at him and see that he looks pretty calm, though I can see him picking at his claws.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Why? He's a barbarian.
Because I've decided the abandoned children deserve to re-establish regular contact. If we're to unite with the Chemians, then we also need to unite ourselves.
I start filling Amicus's goblet as I feel his eyes on me.
Child or not, having a pet like this will show the Chemians my intentions.
Cassius scoffs loudly, popping an olive into his mouth and chewing it vigorously.
Masterful stunt, Amicus. But you still stole Father's ship to get there. Using stretch tech without authorization from the Emperor is a violation of the law. Is it not, Kato?
I hand the goblet to Amicus, silently wondering if the wolf is going to be thrown into jail my first day here. What would happen to me then? Still, Amicus looks calm, and when he sees my wide eyes, he just winks. It could be, but there is no emperor, is there, Cassius? Kato finally lays back, his small plates heaped high with food. He turns his head back to Amicus. Are you saying you piloted the ship to the outer reaches of our empire? Voice commands only work for the Emperor, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. I learned to navigate the ship on my own. I was also able to communicate with their people, negotiate, and sign a contract with him.
This is where I start to hear Amicus's voice falter. I actually do believe now that he doesn't lie often, because it's clear that he's so bad at it. I copy Alexios and return to my kneeling position next to the bed, then switch to a cross-legged one when my knees get too sore. Kato watches from his bed silently, and I again feel unnerved at the feeling that he might be looking at me. Fascinating. Cassius curls his lips back.
Fascinating? He used the stretch drive. He's going to get away with it because father is dead? What does that make of all the other laws? Can a beggar now steal from the market because there's no authority to tell him not to? Can a child rebel from the empire because there is no emperor to tell them?
Quiet, Cassius. You know the circumstances as well as I do. Cassius snaps his mouth shut with a huff, turning his attention back to his food, which he starts to pick at. The conversation seems to stop there, and I wonder if Amicus is in the clear. While Cassius sure seemed indignant, I get the feeling that Amicus wasn't in any danger in the first place. I guess being the Emperor's son has its perks.
Could you get me some more of the Azure, Marco?
I look over at the table for a moment in confusion. What's that? I try to keep my voice low, but that's when Cassius suddenly yowls, clapping a paw to his head.
Oh, gods! It doesn't speak the language?
I look between Cassius and Amicus in confusion.
Of course not. They were abandoned.
Most of the abandoned still speak the language. How far away is his home star?
Roughly 50,000 light years.
I don't care. Don't have it speak again. The last thing I need is a headache from the lingua manually translating everything he says. It's barbaric.
I don't know if he's calling the headache barbaric or me. Probably me.
Upload its language to the Nexus before you let it out in public again, Amicus.
I decide I really don't like Cassius. He's talking about me like I'm just a piece of property. Then I feel Amicus's paw on my shoulder for a moment, giving a soft squeeze before pulling back again. The conversation topic then shifts to stuff I don't really understand. Mostly politics, and the Chemians, whatever that is. Despite their fight earlier, Amicus and Cassius are pretty animated in their conversation. Amicus keeps sticking empty plates in my face, indicating that I should refill them. It's clear that I'm not going to be eating while the wolves are, and I feel my irritation grow. I'm not a servant. I didn't agree to this, and even if this is supposed to help me blend in, I can't help but feel Amicus could have put me in a better position than this.
Virginia sent me a letter last night, saying that she's bringing back a Chemian tomorrow. He got trapped here after the stretch drive depletion.
Oh? He wasn't able to return on the retrieval ship.
He was on Anchorus at the time, so it took him several months to get back to Adastra. He's going to be our guest until the next ship arrives. I think it will be quite interesting to see one in person. Who can say that they've met two siblings?
Cassius reaches down and starts stroking Alexios' head fur. The green and gray cat closes his eyes, smiling and purring. I watch this for a moment, then freeze up as I feel Amicus's paw on my head. He starts to gently scratch his blunt claws into my scalp, ruffling my hair around. It actually feels really good, but knowing what he's doing gets me pissed off all over again. He already knows I don't want to be doing this, that he brought me here against my own will. Now he's stroking me in public like I actually am his pet? Well, I guess it makes sense. I guess he's doing his part to help me blend in, just like I'm doing mine. But that doesn't mean I don't hate it. And then his other paw sticks his empty goblet down under my nose.
More wine, please.
I let the goblet hang in the air for a moment, then take it and reach out robotically for the heavy wine bottle, getting up on my knees to better pour it into the empty goblet. I fill it up as Amicus continues to stroke me.
I'll bet even fewer can say they've met an abandoned species. Wouldn't you think?
Cassius glares at Amicus, and I glare at the wine. I try to remind myself that this is just to help me get home. Or maybe he actually is just showing me off because he likes how he's getting under Cassius's fur. I turn on my knees to face the wolf and hand back his goblet, noticing how full it is, the wine almost sloshing over the rim. Amicus reaches out for the goblet. My fingers twitch, then I feel the goblet slip out of my hand, watching as it seems to fall in slow motion onto its side on the bed. The wine shoots out in a red gush, splashing across Amicus's lighter furred front. The wolf gasps, sitting up suddenly as the wine pours down his chest and stomach and into his pants.
Damn!
Meanwhile, Cassius bursts out laughing behind me, snorting obnoxiously.
Maybe there's a reason so few have ventured out to meet them, Amicus.
I see Alex staring at me, but when I meet eyes with him, he looks down. Amicus reaches over me for one of the towels, glancing down at me as he does. I try to keep myself from smirking, but I think I fail. He pauses, staring at me in astonishment as I guess he realizes that I did it on purpose. He doesn't look angry though, and instead grabs up the towel and starts patting down his front, the fur still stained a dark maroon color.
What are you doing, Amicus?
Cassius has finished his laughing, and I look over to see him staring at us.
What do you mean, what am I doing? I'm cleaning up the mess.
Amicus growls at Cassius, continuing to pat himself down.
Dear gods, you really don't know how to do this. Punish it!
Cassius lazily flops his paw in the air in a slapping motion. I snap my gaze at Amicus, glaring again.
What? No, I can't do that.
Why not?
It's in the contract. No physical punishment, just like Alexios's.
What?
You heard me.
Alexios is a sibling. It's barely even a child.
He is mine, and none of your business.
Punishment is the only way to teach the lesser species, Amicus.
He looks at me.
You, creature, up. I'll hit you instead.
Cassius!
I jump. So does Cassius, ears ringing as Amicus's deep voice bellows over me. Meanwhile, Kato just lounges on his bed, listening. Or maybe not.
I'll make this very clear right now. You are never to lay a paw on him or give him orders of any kind.
Cassius, having recovered, raises an eyebrow to Amicus.
And if I do, brother?
Amicus's fur starts to lay flat on his shoulders again as he shrugs.
I'll punch you.
What? You can't do that. We're not pups anymore.
And if you call him it again, I'll do the same.
Cassius seems to choke for a moment.
What in the world has gotten into you, Amicus?
He looks at the older wolf.
Kato!
Yes, Cassius?
Well, do something. He can't threaten me like that.
Amicus, be nice to your brother. Cassius's ears turn bright red and he slumps on the bed, glaring at his remaining food. Anyway, if you two are finished, then be off to your studies. Don't be late this time, Amicus. Your tutor complained again last week.
That's today?
You know, you should take care to start paying more attention. After seeing what you accomplished, I'm starting to lean towards trials in making my decision. The room suddenly goes very quiet. And Cassius, I need to speak with you for a moment before you leave. Amicus gets to his feet, and I do the same. The wolf glances at Cassius and Kato, but they're deep in conversation. He turns back to me.
I forgot that it's my study day, so I'll be gone for a little while. I'm going to ask Alexios to show you around and give you something to do while I'm away.
I feel myself grow tense at the idea of being without the only person I know around here. Seriously?
Listen, you don't have to do anything. I'll make that clear to everyone. But I feel you might rather have something to do rather than sit in my room all day.
He seems to think it's the chores that I'm upset about, rather than him leaving me alone. All right. Amicus frowns at me, and I can't help but feel a little bad. He does seem to be trying to make things as easy as possible for me. And, sorry. I gesture at his still stained front.
Don't worry. Yes, wine isn't easy to get out of the fur, but I know why you did it. And I deserved it.
Oh, is it he speaking his language again?
Shut up, Cassius.
What?
Alexios.
Amicus gestures at the small cat, who is currently stacking the dirty dishes on top of each other.
Could you please show Marco around the palace, along with the tasks and activities you do? He's unfamiliar with nearly everything.
I would be happy to, Amicus. So you can order my pet around.
Kato, standing over by the doorway and clearly eager to leave, sighs.
Enough! Try to be reasonable, Cassius. Now, both of you be off to your studies. And a quick shower for you, Amicus.
Amicus grumbles and starts to turn away, then turns back to me, resting a paw on my shoulder.
I'll be back towards the evening.
The big wolf pauses, as if wanting to say more, but leaves me with a simple,
I'll see you then.
And with that, he gives me a little wave and another wink before following Cassius and Kato through the archway. Just as Amicus leaves, Cassius pauses to give me a sour look. Then again, most of his expressions are pretty sour, but it still makes me uncomfortable. Then I'm left alone with the cat. I feel an odd sense of loneliness at seeing Amicus just leave like that. It's like my mother just dropped me off at preschool or something. He's the only one that's been treating me like an actual person. Mostly, at least. I hear the small sound of someone clearing their throat behind me.
Hello.
The small cat smiles at me pleasantly, his paws clasped neatly in front of himself. I say he's small, but he's really about the same height as me. It's just odd seeing another alien that's my size when I always have to look up at the wolves. Hi. I see Alexios's left eye twitch, and he raises a paw to his head.
Oh dear, this is going to be an interesting day.
Is something wrong? More twitching.
Just my lingua. It will take a while to learn your language, but it gets better the more you speak. So if you don't mind, I'd like to know more about you. I'm very curious.
Amicus told me to act dumb, so I try to figure out how I might do that. I fix a distant look on my face. Far away. Alexios blinks, then giggles.
Oh.
We both stand there awkwardly for a moment before he gestures at the table.
Well, why don't we have a seat? We eat their leftovers when they've finished.
The cat moves over to sit on Kato's bed, reaching out for his own small plate. I'm reminded of how hungry I am, so I quickly do the same, choosing to sit on Cassius's bed since Amicus's is covered in wine.
Will this food agree with your stomach?
I think so. It actually looks kind of like some of the stuff I eat back home. I mean, it's basically olives, bread, and meat. I point to each of the dishes. Alexios puts his paw back up to his head.
Oh my! So many words! And in full sentences, too!
I freeze. Oh, I mean, I don't really know what this food is. I'm just guessing.
No, I mean, it's your words. So many of them, and in complete complex sentences.
Fuck, I'm bad at this.
I guess the wolves uplifted intelligence a lot more back then.
Oh, maybe. I wonder if I've ruined our plan already, but Alexios doesn't seem alarmed, just curious, so I turn my attention back to the food. There isn't much left on the table. The meat was mostly cleaned off the bone by Kato. Next to it are 4 slices of bread and the bowl of olives. Alexios starts on the poultry, working at it with his claws until it comes apart in 2 pieces with a loud tearing sound. He hands me 1/2.
You should be able to find a little bit of meat on there.
I take it from him, trying not to show my disappointment. Then he puts 2 slices of bread on a plate and slides it toward me before taking the other 2.
Make sure to use the cheese. The bread is a bit bland without it.
I pull a few thin strips of meat off of the bone and taste it. It's good. Really, really good. And I quickly search the bones for more, but there isn't much at all.
Hungry?
I look up and see Alexios delicately picking at his own half of bird. Yeah, haven't eaten in a few days.
Oh really? Why not?
The trip here was a bit rough. I guess I did eat on the ship, but it wasn't very filling.
Oh, like the protein sludge they have. Yeah, that stuff is quite terrible. I can understand why you're hungry. Well, you won't have to worry.
Why not?
We eat dinner with our masters in their rooms. Amicus always serves himself very large portions, and also sneaks me my own food since Cassius doesn't take much himself.
Alexios slowly spreads cheese onto his bread.
He will take good care of you in that respect.
With the mention of Amicus, I start to feel a bit lonely again. Actually, something I've noticed is that the whole palace seems to be lonely. So, where is everyone?
Alexios chews thoughtfully on his bread.
I try to think a way to phrase things stupidly, then give up as I decide he already knows I'm able to form complex sentences. This palace doesn't seem to have very many people around.
Oh, well, did you expect others to be here?
Well, I guess like servants or guards or some other officials?
Most needs in the palace are covered by artificial intelligence and drones. Same goes for the palace defense. I suppose it may be different where you're from, but the siblings learned long ago that the fewer sapients you have in a location that needs to be secure, the better. You and I are an exception.
The bread tastes like literal chalk, so I decide to spread a little bit of the cheese on it, despite the smell. To my surprise, it's salty and creamy and not bad at all. The smell is hard to ignore, though. So, what is the point of having a pet then?
Amicus didn't tell you.
Well, he did. He just mentioned status and stuff. Is there any other reason? Why do we have to do stuff for them when they have robots that can do it instead?
Status is the main reason, yes. Our duty is to be by their side during public appearances, or in official meetings. Obviously, having an artificial sapient doing the same isn't impressive at all. We don't really have to do anything manual in the palace, but Cassius likes the idea of a sapient being his servant. He says it reminds him of the old days.
I see. Amicus told me I don't really have to do anything for him, except brush his fur.
Ah, yes. Amicus is very meticulous about that.
Do you know him well?
Fairly well. I've been here for a few months now, so I've had my fair share of interactions with him, even though Cassius doesn't like it.
I see. What do you think of him?
I think that you're very lucky to have a master like Amicus.
Why is that?
Well, Amicus is very kind. Sometimes he tries to be all official and assertive, and he likes to tease me, but he comes off as more open, whether he intends to or not. This is all compared to Cassius, of course.
I think for a moment. Do you not like being Cassius's pet? There's a pause, though Alexios continues to smile.
Cassius is very specific about how he wants to be talked to and such. But this is a great quality for a prospective emperor to have, for sure. But in casual conversation, it's much easier to talk to someone like Amicus.
I take a sip of the wine, and as far as I can tell, it's similar to the few times I've had it on Earth. He has been really nice to me. At least, after the whole kidnapping thing.
He is a very nice person. He just tends to not think everything through.
Alexios's eyes flick to look behind me before he focuses back on my face.
Understand that normally we shouldn't speak so candidly about our masters. This is just a conversation between pets.
Oh, yeah, I understand. There's a moment of silence that goes on, just long enough to be uncomfortable.
Yes, I thought you would. I have to say that you're extremely perceptive, almost on the same level as a sibling.
I wince internally as Alexios points out my intelligence again. Only took me 10 minutes to fail my one and only job. Alexios smiles at me again.
Ah, was I not supposed to know that?
Apparently he's perceptive as well.
Don't worry. Like I said, this is between pets.
Alexios leans in conspiratorially.
I don't just blab everything I know to my master. I'm simply his servant, not spy.
He leans back again.
Though he might wish I was. But honestly, it's really nice to be able to talk to someone other than my superiors. Amicus was the only one to treat me as an equal, but Cassius usually keeps our contact minimal.
I put the last bit of bread into my mouth, and as soon as I do, Alexios sits up.
Come, we're finished.
Yes, Alexios.
I watch with fascination as the dishes levitate off the table and float away through the archway they originally came through.
Do you want to go outside? Like I said, there's not much to do, but the gardens do require a more sapient touch to keep them presentable.
Yeah, sure. I brush crumbs off my jeans and stand up. I'm still hungry, but the amount that I've eaten has taken the edge off of it at least. I follow Alexios quietly through the halls, really enjoying the architecture of the palace for the first time. We enter the main hall, and Alexios stands in the sunlight, pouring in through the archways.
Ah, aren't the mornings beautiful here? This is the best time to do work in the gardens. I'd say we have a good 3 hours before it gets too hot.
We start walking out into the gardens when I'm suddenly struck by something odd. So, you said we have 3 hours?
Yes?
Well, how long is an hour here?
The same.
Oh, we use the same minutes and hours and stuff? That didn't seem possible. Alexios thinks, rubbing the spot above his left eyebrow.
Ah, well, the lingua is a complicated device. It's parental tech, so it's something that we don't really understand at all. But what we do know is that it translates language in a way that offers the best understanding possible for the host.
Alexios crouches by a pillar, examining the ivy growing around its surface.
I used a measurement of time specific to the wolves and their language, and the lingua simply translated it to a measurement you'd better understand.
The small cat chuckles.
It's something that I've given up on understanding myself. It's not perfect and can create really confusing situations, especially when it comes to certain words and numbers.
Oh. I see Alexios single out a small, white flower growing at the base of the pillar before he plucks it out and sets it to the side. I start to wonder if I should maybe learn the language. The lingua is impressive and all, but it doesn't seem like it's very specific. Alexios grins.
Don't think too much about it. Just try to remember that that doesn't mean everything actually is the same. There are 19 hours in a day on Adastra, which I imagine is at least somewhat different compared to your own planet. Anyway, what I'm doing right now is pulling up some weeds. The drones do a good job of watering and pest control, but they often miss smaller weeds like these.
I crouch at the pillar next to Alexios, searching through the ivy for weeds to pull at the base. So, there are 19 hours in a day here?
Yes.
That's a bit shorter than back home.
Oh, I get that. There are 30 hours in a day where I'm from. You get used to it after a few weeks, though. I prefer it, actually.
I turn my attention back to the pillar and suddenly find myself staring right at a strange, crab-like thing sticking to the stone. At first I wonder if it's a carving of some kind, since it's so big. But as I look closer, it moves, and I realize that it's a massive living spider. The next thing I know, I'm rolling away from the pillar, action movie style, before popping back up to my feet. Oh my god!
What is it?
A spider thing! I'm standing a good 10 feet away from the pillar now, but I can still see the massive spider, its thick legs fanning out to the width of a clock. I shiver. Ugh.
Ah! Ha ha! Oh, I see.
I stare at him. How is that funny?
I'm sorry. They are very startling when you first encounter them.
Alexios walks up to the spider and starts making shooing motions at it. Even from here, I can see its black, beady eyes. It doesn't move at all, choosing to sit motionlessly on its pillar.
Adastran arachnids and insects are disturbingly large compared to the ones on my home moon.
I look around, suddenly feeling like I'm in danger, imagining giant wasps descending from the skies. Alexios starts to look more frustrated as the spider refuses to be intimidated by his limp-wristed swipes.
Nothing in the garden is dangerous, though, and they're needed to balance the ecosystem. This creature's venom is far too mild to cause much more than an itchy bump, if it bites at all.
Alexios gives another weak swipe at the spider, and it takes the opportunity to bolt up his arm so fast that it becomes a blur before stopping on his face. For a moment, we both stand there in shock as it clings to him like a facehugger. Then,
By Galen, get it off!
he dances around in place for a moment as I simply watch in fascinated horror. Finally, he shakes his head hard, and the spider runs down his front to scuttle across the ground and into some bushes. Alexios heaves for breath for a moment, trembling. Despite myself, I have to laugh in amazement at what I just saw.
Why are you laughing?
Sorry, it was just so surprising. And you were so sure of yourself until... I chuckle again.
Well, it surprised me.
He shivers, rubbing his shoulders.
There's honestly nothing to be afraid of when it comes to those. But it was right on me, and the way they move.
He shudders again.
And you just stood there and watched.
I mean, what could I have done? If that had happened to me, I would have jumped in the pond. Alexios sighs, and I see his fur start to flatten down again. Then he also chuckles.
Well, I was about to. Anyway, let's get back to work. If you see another spider, just work around it.
For the next hour, we move from pillar to pillar, cleaning up the unwanted weeds. I'm way more vigilant now, checking every pillar for spiders before we start. Luckily, we don't come across any more. After a while, we finally sit on a bench under some trees, and Com floats out a few platters of tiny pastries that remind me of quiches. Those are followed by glasses of cold, green, vegetable-tasting drinks. It's delicious. So, can I ask where you're from?
Very far away, even farther than your home.
What brought you here? The cat sighs and pauses with a pastry halfway to his mouth.
It's a bit complicated, but I was here as a sort of ambassador. I arrived just as the stretch drive depletion occurred.
What was that? Alexios shrugs.
Well, for whatever reason, the Romanus stopped supplying the wolves with stretch drive power when the Emperor died. They're starbound right now, so they can't shuttle me back to my planet. The situation between the wolves and their parents is worrying, and we don't know how long the wolves will be without the stretch. So my people sent their own ship to retrieve everyone on Adastra, but I, missed it.
Missed it? Alexios frowns, looking embarrassed again.
Well, I slept in and missed the departure.
Wow, really?
I mean, it happens to the best of us, no?
I guess. Why didn't they wait for you? That's kind of messed up that they'd just leave.
When using stretch tech, time is important. Everything runs on a specific schedule, so if you miss it, you miss it. And they're certainly not going to send another one out for one person.
Wow, didn't you have an alarm clock or someone to wake you?
Trust me, it was a series of many unfortunate events that led to that happening. The main one being that even though I woke up with enough time to reach the starport, I got lost in Adastra City's terrible public transportation system. I was running from platform to platform, wolves all around me trying to touch me because they'd never seen a cat before, and I could barely read the signs because, well, for my species, water comes from the eyes when we're stressed, so...
Oh, you were crying.
You know what that is?
Yeah, my species does it too. He looks away, and I can see the insides of his ears turn red.
Ah, I did not know that. It's a shared trait among us and the wolves, but I don't know many others that can do it, aside from the Chemians. Anyway, I eventually decided to use my situation to continue my work and build a relationship with the Imperial family. So I became Cassius's pet.
Alexios' situation doesn't sound all that different from mine, even though the reasons for us getting here were very different. When does the next ship come? Alexios shrugs.
Years. At least one a decade, but sometimes more. I'm hoping within the next few years, though.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's not the worst life, and the wolves treat me well enough. We do have a special relationship.
With Cassius?
Between us and the wolves. Unlike the other siblings, our parents originated in the same galaxy. Though our views are very different, there's a bond there.
Alexios brushes his paws together.
Are you done?
Yeah.
Come, we're finished.
And with that, the platters and glasses float away. I'm starting to get used to all of this.
But Marco, was it?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I guess we skipped introductions. You already know me as Alexios, but you can call me Alex.
Hello, Alex.
Hello, Marco. So now that we're no longer pretending that you're not so sapient anymore, where are you from? Tell me about yourself.
That gives me some pause. While he's been really nice to me so far, I know I can't just reveal everything to Alex, so I settle on being vague like he was. Well, I'm from far away, but less far away than you. I'm a primate.
I see. Are you important among your people?
No, I'm just a student.
Oh. Do you know why Amicus chose you then?
I think he just chose me at random. I just happened to be where the uplift occurred. Alexios blinks, then laughs.
That's just like Amicus.
Yeah, it is, actually.
But I guess it makes sense to choose a commoner if he wants to unite the abandoned children again.
Oh yeah? I decide that shifting the conversation away from me is a good tactic for now.
Yeah, didn't he explain that to you?
Maybe a little. He didn't tell me all that much.
Don't take it personally. Amicus doesn't often think ahead. Right now, the wolves are in a bit of a strange situation. Again, this is between you and me, but they've fallen behind the other siblings in terms of spread and resources. The main reason being that they don't uplift their children to similar intelligence levels as themselves.
Intelligence levels? I thought they just spread their culture. Alex frowns at me.
You don't know? I guess you were abandoned, but you should know that your intelligence, every child's intelligence, was uplifted by a sibling.
Oh, no. I guess we lost that bit of information.
Well, that's not the end of their problems. These children are indentured servants, in a way. In exchange for having their intelligence, mostly, uplifted, they have to serve the Empire until their debt is repaid.
That doesn't sound good. Oh, and how long has that been going on?
Well, let's just say that the first successfully uplifted wolf children haven't quite finished repaying their debt.
That sounds like slavery? Alex glances at me.
It does, doesn't it?
That's confusing to me. But if they have all of these robots and stuff, why do they need sapients to be their slaves?
Advanced artificial sapients are gifted by the parents. We can't build them. We're a bit spoiled here in the palace, but outside, not so much. And even then, artificial sapience isn't perfect and likely never will be. Actual thinking machines don't exist. This is why uplifting children to the same intelligence level as a sibling is important. Good ideas can come from anywhere.
I guess your people don't do what the wolves do?
No, we uplift our children as much as we can. This practice is isolated to the wolves. They're seen by the other siblings as harsh on their own children and the rights of sapients in general.
I see. I'm starting to see the wolves and even Amicus in a whole new light. As if reading my mind, Alex goes on.
But things are changing. Amicus choosing you as his pet shows that he sees you as close to an equal. But then there's Cassius.
Alex's tail swishes around on the bench between us.
He'd rather things stay the same, or even regress. That's why he's made a strong challenge against Amicus. There are many wolves who are unsure of the change Amicus suggests, and a proposed alliance between the wolves and the Chemians is only adding to it.
Chemians?
They're another sibling species, the most powerful in the galaxy, in fact. But that worries a lot of people here. There hasn't been a war between siblings in over 100 years, but the last one was between the Chemians and the wolves. You can imagine what sort of problems that might create. So Cassius, wanting the wolves to stay independent and in complete control of their children, is rather popular. You might wonder why I'm telling you this, but I want you to understand the empire that you're in. It will make it easier to navigate.
I was in fact wondering why he's telling me all of this. Does he have some other motives that he's not telling me? I look over at him. Do you want Cassius to become emperor?
I like that we can discuss a lot of things, and being a sibling allows me to have more freedom than most. But that's one thing I should probably keep silent on.
That only confuses me more, but it doesn't sound like he's on Cassius's side. Maybe Amicus and I could find an ally in him. Well, I think I would prefer Amicus if his whole thing is to treat other sapients equally. From what I can tell, that seems to please Alex.
Well, we'll find out soon enough after the trials.
Alex's mood suddenly brightens.
But anyway, I've really been enjoying our time together today. Like I said, it's so nice to be able to talk to someone who isn't my superior. I hope we can do this often while you're here.
Yeah, of course.
Wonderful.
Alex raises a paw to look up at the sun, at Vita.
We should keep working. It's starting to get too hot out here.
For the next several hours, we work around the garden before finally moving inside to walk around the palace a bit. He points to doors for things like the throne room and communal bath, but we never go inside, and he tells me I should only do so when I'm with Amicus. Eventually, we move back to the dining room where Alexios suggests we watch the screens until our master's return. He says it will better acquaint me with wolfish culture. It takes me a moment to realize that I'm watching a sort of film starring wolves similar to Amicus. They're acting out scenarios about traveling into space and finding more sapients. The sapient species they find are wolves in masks. I guess they don't really have CGI, because every effect looks practical. It's long, boring, and the acting is overly exaggerated, like they're in a silent film. Finally, after what seems like a good 3 hours, Alex tells me that Amicus will be returning soon, and that I might want to tidy up his room before he gets back. Welcome to the after reading. That was quite the exposition dump from Alexios, wasn't it? But hey, now we know why Amicus told Marco to play dumb, and that Marco isn't alone in thinking that Amicus doesn't always think things all the way through. The revelation about the stunted intelligence and indentured servitude of the wolves' children is particularly interesting, setting up the conflict between Amicus and Cassius nicely. We've seen Amicus treat both Marco and Alexios with the dignity and respect another sentient being deserves, whereas Cassius treats Marco like property and enjoys having a sibling species as a pet because it reminds him of the good old days. You can almost hear him saying, "Make Adastra great again." And I think I just threw up in my mouth a little. We also found out that Amicus's original idea, the one where he finds an abandoned child species and takes it as his pet, was actually a good one. And it seems to have sufficiently impressed Kato into choosing between the two brothers via trials now. So what will happen when Marco confronts Amicus about the wolves' space slavery? And just what the heck are these trials about anyway? Find out in the next episode of Adastra. Thanks for watching.